Do you remember Quetzalcoatl, the rebellious people the dragon riders punished by turning the whole nation into sand? Turns out, its survivors didn't disappear into the desert left behind. Many of them ended up right here in Lormyr, and what they brought changed the whole religious landscape of the Young Kingdoms. Let's go find out how. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Elric and the Young Kingdoms. Last episode, we traveled from Ramasas through Iosas and moved all the way down to Alorasaz. Today, we will be staying in Alorasaz, and we'll be learning a bit more about the religion of the locals. We'll learn a bit about the military, the governmental structure, and as its nature of the Murkoch's world, we will be getting into some heavy metaphysical concepts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that if there are any inconsistencies or mistakes, let me know in the comments and I'll address them in the following episode. The world of Murkoch and sourcing all this information from various of RPG books and snippets from the books, it is quite intimidating to be frank, and I really want to stay as faithful as I can. I have immensely deep respect towards Michael Moorcock and all the work of the RPG book writers and the many artists that have drawn the Eternal Champion over the years. And with that disclaimer out of the way, let's dive in. Kaneloon and its Dark Lady will have to stay a mystery for a little while longer. Some things are worth waiting for, and this is one of them. Instead, we're going to get comfortable at the inn we're staying at, so let's buy a round of drinks and huddle around the warm fire pit while we talk about the worship of the White Lords. We have already talked about how law and chaos play a much more significant role than just different religions. This shift in either direction physically transforms the world. Law represents physical structure, and chaos is raw, pure, unshaped matter. Well, how did Lormyr come to worship law anyway? We opened the video by mentioning Quetzalcoatl. What does that have to do with Lormyr? Turns out, when Melniboné exercised their endless cruelty upon the rising nation and turned it into ash, many of those that occupied what today is known as the Sighing Desert moved to Lormyr and settled across the river. This settling didn't go quite unnoticed. The Quetzalcoatl team married directly into Lormyr's royal house. A Woko overhearing a talk mentions that King Fadan's family carried a dark complexion which stood out against the fair-colored Lormyrians. We thank him for the remark and continue to ponder on what else the Quetzalcoatl team brought over from their nation of ash. They brought their worship of the White Lords. They brought something else too, a deep hatred of the Empire that turned their homeland to ash. That hatred did not fade. It had fermented for centuries until it became the ideological backbone of Lormyr's rebellion against the Dreaming City. And to that, all the Wokos who have now gathered around us take a big sip from their pints and cheer in agreement. So, what is the Church of Law? How long has it been around for? Most gathered around assume it's ancient or other line of mixed responses. Well, the scholarly accounts we go by are surprisingly young. Even worship of the White Lords is generally only estimated to be around 11,000 years old. The church itself, as a formal institution, is barely 4,500. Comparing that to Melniboné's 10,000 year reign, law was almost new. The new religion for the new people. With this in mind, what happened next makes a lot more sense. Around 3,000 years ago, Melniboné outlawed the worship of law outright. It didn't work. The ban seemed to have only deepened its roots. Worship of what the text called the Dukes of Constancy kept spreading underground, and it fed resentment towards chaos that would eventually become impossible to contain. The time moves quickly when you're drinking the Woko brew, and before we know it, the inn is filling nicely, and many people that spent the night before are stopping by again. Some of the Wokos want to learn about their own history, and a scruffy walking man asks what happened after Elo Art, after the Republic, and after all of that. And well, that is a topic of itself, so let's outline some key events that happened over the past 4 centuries. 1YK is the first year of the Young Kingdom's calendar. It starts with the Church of Law already in the years of the throne. Eloar's coronation makes law state religion on its inception, and immediately Lormyrian missionaries get sent across the Young Kingdoms to spread the gospel of rebellion, landing on the isles of the Purple Towns, steering up north in Shuta Mirai. By 12YK, Albec vanishes chasing Castle Kaneloon. We're not touching that story, we promised. The Lormyrian Empire he helped build begins to shake. It doesn't take long, and by 102YK, the monarchy collapses entirely following the death of a weak heir to the throne. Here's one detail that will make our Woko friends stand up. The general who ousts the prince and declares the republic is named Efrosin of Alorasaz. Everyone in this room walked the roads and drank from the wells his family drank from. Nothing lasts forever, and neither does the republic. A century later, it nearly collapses from infighting and is safe due to an external threat that forces the Church of Law to unify for once. In 202 YK, something called the Barrier of Law gets ruptured, and an army of demons pours across the northern edge of the world. Pantang are suspected to have had a hand in tearing it open, but it is not proven. A hero named Targano ends up leading the counterattack, and by the time the dust settles, he's got his own cult of worshippers who still light candles for him up in Vilmir and Ilmiora to this day. We stop for a moment as a local guard steps into the inn, assuming we're in trouble for bringing up old feuds and stories, but instead they rest around the rest of the townsfolk. We all bring up texts and scrolls and references from old books and records all scattered around the table, and finally we get to things that everyone knows a lot more about. 200 years before the albino emperor takes the ruby throne, the Republic finally gives out for good. The old royal family gets its crown back, and Lormyr becomes a kingdom again. Which brings us right back to where we started tonight, sitting in this inn, in a kingdom built on refugee grief, generous ambition, and 4 centuries of a church that did everything it could to stay afloat. We all share a moment of silence, and everything goes quiet. Evening comes to a close, and most of the folk start leaving as the innkeeper throws a couple big logs in the fire pit for the night. A man with a hood that's been sitting quietly tugs on one of our coats and asks us just how powerful is the influence of the Church of Law today, as if mocking us. The Church of Law isn't a fading relic clinging to old glory. It's strong and threatening institution with grip on daily life across the Young Kingdoms. All across the different continents, the Church of Law applies itself to a different degree. In Vilmir, you get the most draconian conservative rating. Once a place in the world set apart by the White Lords, and any attempt to rise above is treated as an insult to the cosmic order itself. In Jarkor, the tone is much softer, while places like Arkimilar tolerate sorcery freely and keep a truce with the Church of Chaos. Without the man that the golden pyramids of Goldar, the richest and largest temple to the White Lords anywhere on Earth, is all the proof he needs that law is not going anywhere. The man turns to us and murmurs, "For now," as he staggers out the inn into the dark. So, in closing, we started with a question about sand and refugees, and somewhere along the way, we turn this into a whole story of how a nation built on grief and ambition ends up running the most powerful religious institution in the Young Kingdoms. There's still many questions we still have to answer, but I need to pace every bit of lore into the story. Any loose terms mentioned here and there or a character, I will address and we will cover once again. Everything will slowly reveal itself and it will make a lot more sense. Every location and every character is related to numerous others, and it's difficult to not lose focus and stay on point. Castle Kaneloon is waiting for us. And as always, make sure you subscribe to explore the rest of Moorcock's world with me. And be aware the journey will be long and perilous, and I'll be glad to have you with me.